Welcome to the Meltzone podcast. This is episode 46 from May 31st, 2021. I'm Tom.
And I'm Stefan. And on today's episode, I'm going to talk a bit about, that I'm now a trademark. CNC Kitchen is now a trademark, and a bit of meta behind that, and also, how you can trademark your own brand. Then a bit of talking about procedural parametric pattern generation and G-code generation that is not done by slicing an STL file. And also a bit of a controversy. Devin from Make Anything one of his designs was ripped off by another company and put on Kickstarter without him really, missing the words already again, credited for, what he did there.
And in other news, 3D printing is making more stuff possible that wasn't or was a bit more expensive or a bit more complex before. That is solid state batteries that are made with a 3D printing process, something we're going to need a lot of in the future, and maybe 3D printing is that little bit of an edge that the tech needs to get to the mainstream right now. We also have two questions in this episode. The first one being about whether speed should be something that we test for in a 3D printer, and Stefan and I discuss about how we can even measure speed and what goes into determining whether a speed is usable or not. And the other question is, what do you do with all those little leftover bits on spools of filament? How can you use them? How can you splice them together? And I think Stefan has a really good suggestion that is easy to use. So let's go and have a look at that. So this is the first time, I guess, that it's Thomas Sonora and CNC Kitchen TM recording a podcast together.
Is it TM? I think it's just the R in a circle. I'm not sure about that. At least I think for the moment, I'm still not really eligible to put the R sign next to my name or my logo, because that's, I think, an Anglo-American thing. But CNC Kitchen is now a registered trademark, at least in Germany, and hopefully pretty soon also in Europe.
And then in the US and worldwide as well?
Yeah, we'll see. I still need to figure that out, because registering a trademark is connected with a bit of cost, and I don't know, with cost and effort.
Obviously, yeah.
The effort is interestingly not too high, because I applied for a trademark name at the German Brands and Patent Office. Yep. And the only thing you basically need to submit is what brand you want to trademark. And then the so-called Nizza-Klassen, which is a list, I think, which has like 5,000 entries, where you need to choose a couple of classes where your brand is operating in. And I think that is the tricky part, because
especially for like media brands, essentially. If you're someone like, I don't know, Apple, it will be pretty obvious. Okay, you're making consumer electronics, and you're not operating in the food class. Yeah.
But this is the interesting thing. I'm operating in electronics is just still a way too big field. So as I said, there I think around like 3,000 to 5,000 of these Nizza classes.
Right.
And they sometimes really go very deep into details. I don't have my list right here at the moment, but you can do video production and whatever. It's a ton of things. And this was something I really struggled with to find the proper one.
So what's the...
To find the proper ones.
Can you just do one, or what's the downside of just choosing everything? Could you do that?
You could do that. So the thing is, when you first apply for a brand in Germany, you pay like a base fee, and that base fee includes, I think, 2 or 3 of these Nizza classes.
Okay.
Which is around 300 euros, I think. And every additional class costs you, I think, an additional 200 euros.
Oh, that's pretty steep then.
So, yeah, you could apply for all of them, but that would be basically a monetary problem. And the thing is, you can and should only apply for those classes where you are using your brand. Because if you would, for example, apply for Thomas Sanladero Media in, I don't know, toothpaste, somebody could put you in front of a court. I don't even know if that's even necessary, but they can say, okay, you have applied for toothpaste, but you're not using your whole brand for toothpaste. So your whole brand trademark is not valid anymore. So you really need to think about, okay, in which directions will you be operating?
I mean, that almost makes sense in a way. I'm surprised that like legislation and that sort of stuff is so like... It has taken care of those edge cases where someone with a ton of or a pile of money just says, "Hey, I'm going to register pair for everything, every category that it can think of." Yeah. And what I
still don't know how it would work out in the end if somebody else would say, "Okay, I register a brand for Thomas Sanladero Media for toothpaste." And he is producing Thomas Sanladero toothpaste, even though he's not in any way connected to you. If there would be the possibility to get that trademark granted as well. Right. I'm not that deep into that topic.
So what did he actually register? Is it just the name or the logo as well? What's actually included in that?
So there are 2 ways what you can do. You can either apply for a name or for a logo and everything which is connected to that logo. The best way is usually trying to apply just for the name itself, because that gives you the possibility to later change the logo, but your brand name is still under that trademark. But sometimes that's not possible if the names are too generic or descriptive of what you're doing. Yeah. And I was kind of afraid because CNC Kitchen is kind of descriptive, but in the end I got that granted. So this name trademark.
It's a unique combination of 2 things, right? You wouldn't typically put CNC and Kitchen together.
Yeah. But if that would not have worked, I would have needed to apply for a, it's called Bildmarke, a picture or I don't know the proper translation for that, but a brand where you trademark your logo. Right. And the name and everything which is connected in that way.
Not just the words themselves, but the actual implementation of those words into a brand. Exactly.
That's also fine, but as soon as you would start to change your logo, you would need to apply for a new trademark. Right. Which comes with the problem that you need to pay for that application again, but also, I don't know, maybe a couple of years later, legislation changed, or there are some competitors where this would not be possible anymore. I don't know. I'm really happy that I got the just CNC Kitchen name now trademarked for a couple of those Nizza classes, and I still need to implement that R thing behind my logo.
Make sure you use the correct one, because if you imply that this is registered or protected in some way that it isn't by using that logo, you might get in trouble as well. Yeah. So is that just a one-time thing, or is there like a renewal process that you have to pay for again, or like running costs for that?
So I think for the first application, your trademark is protected for the next 5 years, and then you need to pay an additional amount to just keep that trademark. With that German trademark, it's now, I think, also pretty easy to apply for the European trademark. So I will probably be doing that. It's probably going to be another like €1,000. But then it's protected in all of the EU. And I still need to figure out how that would work out for the US and if it's necessary to register it there at the moment. I thankfully knew somebody who at least could tell me a bit about the process and also about the NHTSA classes and stuff like that. But in the end, I thought, okay, there are lawyers, patent lawyers or trademark lawyers, who basically sell you a package. So, and they do the research in the background. So they do the research if they think it's possible to, for example, register that name or register that brand, if there are already competitors on the market that have registered that, and they do all of the application process. It's going to cost you a little, but if your registration is denied, you need to do it again and you need to pay the whole amount again.
Right.
So that can also be quite expensive.
Also now you're going to have to like actually defend that trademark, right? So if somebody else uses it, you are required to defend that name and take them to court, or otherwise like your trademark gets basically invalidated because you have you show no interest in actually defending it, right?
Yeah, I would need to. I really hope that it doesn't get to that point. But yeah, we'll see. I think this is the responsibility that you have once you are a registered trademark. It's to be totally honest, it's a really interesting step because I can still remember before I started my YouTube channel, we were on a walk outside in the snow and I thought about, okay, what could be a name for the channel? And now just 5 years later, you are a real brand. You are now a registered trademark and stuff like that. So yeah, things grew pretty well.
It's good validation, yeah.
It's really good validation. I don't know. I have my certificate now. I was wondering if I put that also now onto my wall next to my YouTube play button, or if it just goes into one folder and stays there. I think it's at least a bit you can be proud of, even though everyone can register any name.
Yeah, but it's like, well, you now have a need for it, and you now have the size to justify registering for a trademark. So, congratulations for that.
Thank you very much. Let's see how it's getting implemented. Let's see when you are trademarking your name.
Yeah, well, for me and for branding, it's surprising. Like in general, I'm just always surprised that like your channel is so much better than mine in so many ways. You've got a trademark, you've got a proper name, you've got more views, you've got better content, arguably. And I'm just like, am I losing touch? No. So logo wise for me, and this is something I've been talking about for a year now. I finally ordered a logo, a redesign on Fiverr from an artist that I think I like the art of. We'll see what they draw up. Okay, that should be sometime this week, and then finally I'm gonna have that transition away from my name that nobody can spell. Over to Made with Layers. So that's gonna be interesting how people are confused to which new channel they are now subscribed to. Yeah, so the plan is to have like a transition period where the channel name changes to Thomas Sanadra / Made with Layers, and then it's Made with Layers / Thomas Sanadra, and then after a while it's just Made with Layers. Okay. We'll see. I'm kind of scared about that, but also excited because it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and finally kind of had the headspace to dig into that.
It's something that you're always putting off because it is involving change, it is involving efforts, and with the size that you are having, it is also a big responsibility to do it the proper way. If you're just rebranding a channel, it could be the end of a channel in the end. But also on the other hand, it could also lift your content up because people might be more connected with Made with Layers than with your real name.
Yeah. And also for me, I want to kind of see it as justification to kind of step outside the 3D printing like niche of a niche and kind of experiment with more makery content. I mean, if you look at, I like to make stuff. They're doing all sorts of stuff, and I really I really enjoy the way that they're kind of spreading out their content and doing everything from 3D printing to woodwork to everything. I mean, the channel is still going to be about, my channel is still going to be core 3D printing, but I want to do some other projects as well. My best performing video still involves almost no 3D printing. The info display, the digital dashboard, that has almost no 3D printing in it. So I'm like, well, why am I don't want to say wasting my time, but why am I spending my time on making content that is so hyper-focused on 3D printing when other content would be like better in so many ways? So yeah.
But I now could actually be questioning the choice of your new channel name, because made with layers.
Look, and this is where the smart part starts. So the idea with layers is, of course, 3D printing is layers, and that is like obvious. But if you look at plywood is also layers. If you look at paint is also applied in layers. If you look at stuff that I might be building, it might also be a process of layering up different materials and different components in layers. So everything's going to have layers somehow. Even if you look at, I don't know, the desktop that I have here, it's a layer of, melamine on top of a layer of HDF on top of a layer of corrugated cardboard. Everything is layered. So that's kind of the idea. And I'm hoping the logo is going to reflect that in a way. The logo is not just going to be 3D printing. I still haven't seen a draft, which kind of scares me that draft should have been here by now, but I did ask for something that would involve different materials that are all kind of applied in layers.
Okay. It was kind of a provocative question, because I basically also always get the question, why are you called CNC Kitchen? Because you're
stuff.
3D. Well,
that often.
I think more the CNC part, but a 3D printer is a CNC.
Absolutely.
A 2D printer is a CNC. My CNC router, of course, is a CNC. Because I also had in mind that, CNC is more than just 3D printing. Yeah. It can involve lathes, it can involve milling and things like that. So, I probably need to do more cooking. Maybe for the next live stream, we'll see. I started. I think this was actually like 2 years ago. I started preparing for my 100,000 subscribers celebration, a video for how to make a perfect steak on a 3D printer, but I never finished it somehow because
those are the worst.
Those are the worst, but I think I didn't finish it due to the reason I was scared that this could, I was scared in a way that I need to do this properly, because if I would do it properly, there's a lot of potential on drawing in viewers that usually don't watch like machining or 3D printing channels. Yeah. It could be a really clickbaity title, but I don't know. In some way, it scared me off a little bit. I probably still need to do that at some point, maybe for the 500,000 subscribers celebration.
Yeah, that should be coming up soon.
Oh yes,
it's the perfectionist in us, and the thing is, like, the videos that are like perfect, where nothing goes wrong and everything just clicks into place, those are boring. Like, there's no drama in that. You need to have something that's engaging, and as it turns out, stuff that just works out perfectly is not that exciting. So, yeah.
Maybe just a second about logos and Fiverr, because I often get this question, and taking a look at my channel and also this podcast channel right here, both logos have been performed or have been done by artists on Fiverr. So Fiverr is basically, it's a platform where artists can offer their
Their services, basically.
Their services, and you choose somebody, you give him or her basically a description what you want to have. Prices vary from $1 to $10,000. And so far, I have had almost every time a really good experience using the people on that platform, and they have come up with really interesting ideas, even though they might often not be involved in 3D printing or in this stuff that I make. But what I just want to say with that is, if you listener or you viewer out there maybe have an idea and you need a logo for that, that is an option if you are not that artistically
skilled.
I'm missing the word skilled. Because same with me. Some people don't like the platform. I had really good experience with that. I'm really looking forward to your logo.
Yeah, I've done stuff on Fiverr and on comparable platforms too. But the thing is also, you kind of get what you pay for. If you just buy a $5 logo design, you are going to get a $5 logo. Like that's, you're going to get something that's super generic and maybe not like super polished. It's going to be a logo. Like if you don't have expectations that are super high, it's going to work for you. But you know, if you buy, like I said, if you just pay $5, you're going to get a $5 logo. So the logo package that I chose, I think is like $100 total, which is still incredibly cheap. That's an artist from Washington State. Typically, I mean, a lot of them are from India, Pakistan, etc. But this was an artist from Washington State in the US. And yeah, we'll see. And I already wrote like, hey, you know, this is the budget. This is kind of what we want to start with. And like, if this works out, I'm going to have more stuff that I'm going to need. For example, like a scaled down and simplified version of the logo that works on smaller screens. All that we will see. I'm excited about the first draft that comes up.
Yeah. The podcast channel logo was, I think, $20 or $25. My channel logo was $50 or something like that. So let's see.
It's decent, yeah. I mean, Fiverr has been sponsoring channels before. I think they sponsored Potato Jet at some point. Maybe we can have them as a sponsor on the podcast at some point. Oh, you're liking that segue? Because we also have a sponsor on this podcast for the very first time. And yeah, companies, if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast as well, get in touch with us. But today we are sponsored by Siraya Tech and their lines of resins. You've put the Siraya Tech's resins through their paces, right, Stefan?
Yeah, especially the blue resin. So I think that was almost 2 years ago, when all of the other resins I tested at that point were really brittle, and the blue resin was more engineering grade. It was not as brittle. It was really durable, and showed me that resin prints could maybe also been used, or could also be used for applications where you have impact loads and you have forces and things like that. And the really interesting thing is that with the resins that Siraya Tech is making, they offer the possibility to also mix their resins. So they also have the tenacious resin. Is that pronounced the correct way?
Yes. So that's going to be hard to see. But I've got a bottle of blue. I've got a bottle of tenacious here, and you can mix those however you want. So if you want something that's a bit more rigid and you know, maybe are okay with having it a bit more brittle, you can do that. You can mix those however you want. So they've got blue, they've got which is the resin that is engineered for LCD printers specifically. They've got tenacious, they've got sculpt, which is a high temperature material. Heat deflection temperature of 160 degrees is what they're claiming for this, and an ultra version with 220. That is something that I guess if you crystallized a filament print, you would be able to get that too. But with the resins, you just get that out of the box.
And you could basically do simple injection molds with that. And I think that's one of the backgrounds.
Right. You probably, I mean, would you need something like a Trennmittel, a separating film in that?
Could be, but yeah, just put some silicone spray or something like that in there, and you could do for just 1 or 2 or 5 shots, depending on how complex your part is. You could basically do a simple injection mold using a resin printer and Siraya Tech's Sculpt Ultra material.
Absolutely. But also, if you want to just print stuff, blue is a great choice. And I did use that for the glitter-filled prints.
Yeah,
worked out beautifully. So thank you to Siraya for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. And if you guys want to check out their products, we've got links in the video description below.
Thank you, Siraya Tech.
Yeah. Let us know how awkward we made this sponsor spot. Should we put some music over this, just to separate it from the rest of the video?
Yeah, maybe you can find someone on Epidemic Sound.
Oh, but we don't have an epidemic license for this for the podcast.
No, we don't.
They said it was okay to, because I have the epidemic license for my main channel. They said it was okay to also use it on the podcast, but honestly I don't want to risk it because we'll see.
If we would be demonetized for that podcast, we would probably lose like $20 in ad revenue for a podcast episode. Yeah, that would basically ruin us. Just use the YouTube music library.
Oh, right,
audio library.
That
maybe there's something interesting.
But wasn't it like if you use the tracks from that, you can't monetize at all, or was that was with shorts? If you use them for shorts, you can't monetize them.
Shorts are not monetized if they are in the shorts player. Yeah, there's the YouTube Shorts Fund or whatever it's called now. My like channel music, intro music that I've been using for the past years is out of the YouTube library, and so far I've been able to monetize my videos.
Yeah,
thankfully.
I think it was specifically like shorts are going to get monetized at some point. I think it was specifically for that time or that case when they do get monetized. If you use the library, you cannot monetize shorts that use YouTube audio library music. So I don't know. Future talk.
Maybe just because it might be interesting for some viewers, and I also know that there might be other creators listening to the podcast. Monetization and shorts. I have not done any shorts, but I have talked to people that do a lot of shorts. And in the beginning, when I saw the amount of views that they get, I thought, they must be driving a Rolls Royce now, because like having 10 million views a day, that's 1,000 times more that I get every month. I don't know, something like that. Shorts, if you are watching them in the normal shorts player, are not monetized, because there are also no pre-roll ads, there are no post-roll ads, and they're just on the mobile devices. The only way currently shorts get monetized on YouTube is if you find them in your subscription feed, or if you take a look at the creator's site and directly click on one of their shorts videos. So yeah, for some, they do make really good content and they get millions and even almost billions of views, but they don't make a lot of money with it. Yeah. Well, in the end, how do we make money with our videos? With the ads that are played before and after and in between,
and through YouTube memberships,
of course. And I think that's just not happening with shorts. I'm maybe a bit biased there because I have YouTube Premium and I don't see any ads at all.
They're fine here.
They're fine here. Yeah, I don't regret it at all. But we've talked about that plenty of times. Yeah, so shorts is a nice way to find a big audience, but I think for the moment it's not a way to get rich.
Yeah, I mean, if you do stuff with the sole intent of making money off of it and getting rich, like probably you're not gonna have a good time or do the best version of that. So Short YouTube selling it, hey, let's just do shorts for fun. Let's just have, try out some different formats. All that. It's supposed to do it for fun.
Yeah. Though since they are battling themselves with, TikTok, basically, and they want to keep creators on YouTube and also like gain new creators on YouTube that are doing shorts, they have started to make this YouTube Shorts fund, which I think has $100 million in it, which will over the months be paid out to the biggest shorts creators.
So if you're just a normal person making shorts, you're not going to get any of that. It's just for the best performing shorts and channels.
Yeah.
And I guess 2-minute papers could almost be a shorts channel. It used to be literally 2-minute videos about papers. It's now 8-minute videos about it's still called 2-minute papers. But Dr. Karol oh God, sorry, I can't. He did a video on a procedural parametric pattern generation process, and it's called 5-fiber-like. Oh God, is it a lot? 5-fiber-like tools that can now be 3D printed, and it's so what he does is usually he presents scientific papers that are new and kind of interesting in the ways that interest him. So what this paper is a research into making parts that bend in specific ways. So and by using 3D printing, by having basically infill structures that are arranged in very specific ways. So, like, for example, you could have a block that is just a square, you press down on it, and all of a sudden it twists as you press down on it. Or what they're showing is you can have pliers that are all built with the same process, and specifically in the hinge area of those pliers, allow that rotational deflection in that one spot.
And they're not only using infill density to adjust those properties, but they are using specific infill patterns at specific locations to get those properties, to create a hinge or to have it stiff in one direction and compliant in the other direction.
Yeah.
The most simple way you can imagine that if you would print, for example, out of TPU, just a block of material which doesn't have any perimeters, for example, honeycomb structure, that structure is very rigid if you compress it more or less in the Z direction. But if you would turn it on one of the sides, it has way different stiffness properties and different compliance. And what he's showing, what is written in those papers, they are applying those ideas in a very smart way that you can adjust the properties of a part very precisely and also basically automatically.
Yeah, it's a generative design, not just for the way that it's printed, or made, how the physical part is made by generating it with the 3D printer. No, it's a generative process where you define, okay, this area of the part should have these sort of stiffness parameters, and these other parts should work differently, and then that process automatically fills it in with appropriate structures. And it's not like it's just doing, hey, we've got this sort of pattern that works for that, or that sort of pattern that makes it rigid, and this makes it soft in that way. No, it's actually adaptively adapting. It's adapting to the geometry of the parts, and it's creating like little tree rings in some cases, or all sorts of different structures that are not predetermined, that are a result of the algorithm that does that, but it's dynamic to however you want your part to perform, and however the part is structured on the outside, what the shape of the part is.
And this is one of the cool things how 3D printing should be used in the future, because 3D printing is not only, printing a 3-dimensional part, but you have way more possibilities. You can use these, generatively created infill patterns to adjust the properties of a part to, I said it on the foaming material videos, adding an additional dimension to your part. So you don't only tell the printer how the shape of a part will be, but you also can adjust the properties of a part in a really smart way. And this is only possible, or basically only possible, with 3D printing. And this is still way underused, because for once you need to find applications for it, and on the other hand you need to have software that can generate basically tool patterns using these ideas in the background.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're going to see this in a slicer at some point. Would be great, because right now slicers, biggest achievement is, we now have gyroed infill, which is still, just uniformly distributed throughout the entire part. So there's no areas. Well, you can do modifier meshes where you have like an isotropically less rigid area, but you can't do this.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd communicate that to a slicer with like standard formats. Of course, they've got all their specialized software, but how you would implement that in an STL is never going to hold that sort of information. You would need some sort of a vector field that is like overlaid over your part, essentially, as an additional channel of information. Also, how would you do that in CAD? It's like you have your entire tool path that is set out to do this one specific thing, to make solid parts that the slicer then decides itself how it wants to infill. But like, how would you do that in CAD? Just have a second geometry that overlays it?
I think this is kind of similar to the problem that we currently have with ladder structures in CAD, because like designing ladder structure in CAD is nothing anyone should do, just because modeling ladder structure is so computationally intensive. I think the 3MF format now allows basically assigning different parameters to volumes in your part. So in CAD you would, for example, just say, okay, all of this part should be filled later with lattice structure with these parameters, for example, or even maybe provide a unit cell in the background. And then in the slicer, for example, where you were just working with tessellated structure, you take this information and fill this space, which is not filled in the beginning, but you have this information that this should be filled with the structure you desired. And I think something like that would also be necessary, that you're still doing a CAD design, and then maybe you have a simulation software, just some other post-processing software that then assigns specific patterns to specific parts, or you would maybe even need to implement that in the slicing process itself, because what they are doing is not only just changing patterns or densities at specific locations. This is those patterns transition into each other, and I think that's hard to do with just saying, okay, this block of part shall have this property and this block shall have that property. It's interesting, but this is something where 3D printing can really shine, and I want to see that way more in the future.
Yeah.
So software, it's always software.
It's always software. Yeah, the hardware is so good now that it's. We've talked about this before. Yeah. To close this out, let me just play the intro real quick of the video, because it has the name in there properly. Okay.
Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér.
Okay, there we go. Stefan, you didn't hear that, but our listeners and viewers were able to hear the correct pronunciation. Great channel, by the way. Highly recommended.
I still had something on my mind. There is one British guy who is currently posting a lot of stuff on Twitter on, I think it's not procedurally generated G-code, but he does STL-less.
The full, what's it called? FullControl GCode?
Yeah, something like that. This, I think, already goes into that direction because he's not using like geometry in the background and a slicer, but I haven't tried his tool out yet. I really wanted to, but I just did not find the time yet. But he has ways to adjust the G-code with just, I think, a programming language or something like that.
This is so. I'm hoping I'm remembering this correctly, but a couple of years ago, I was at a show. I don't know which show it was, but I recorded an interview or a presentation by Ato Mamoumani, French artist, was at Burning Man, did a whole bunch of arts with 3D printing, and if I remember this correctly, he was using Grasshopper at the time. Which is a tool that lets you like parametrically and procedurally generate G-code as well. And it's kind of it's been a while. It's like node-based where you can say, okay, this generates that, and then we process it with this. And he was able to do some really interesting stuff. I think he was doing like vase sculptures or sort of that sort of stuff that never saw geometry, never saw a slicer. And was just built up by a series of instructions and patterns essentially that get computed. Sorry if that was loud. So go ahead.
No, I have you ever used Grasshopper?
I have not.
Okay, because me neither. But I have seen other people do really interesting things using that tool. They generated totally complex, I don't know how it even works in the background, but structures to generate designs and to have basically a parametric way to adjust something right here, and in the end you get out another model, or I don't know, maybe another G-code. It's really cool. It's a really, I think, artistic way of designing parts.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not going to make you engineering parts that need to fit to anything. Well, I guess it could, but for the most part, it is to make parts that have an interesting visual appeal to them.
Yeah.
Which is valid. Like, not everything needs to be a box with a bunch of screw holes, right?
Nope. Full G-code Designer, it's called.
FullControl GCode Designer, yeah.
FullControl GCode Designer. Really cool. Definitely want to try that out. I think it's still at the moment, he does kind of simple structures with it, but he applies that concept in really interesting way.
Is that his tool, or is that something that somebody else makes?
No, I think it is his tool.
Okay.
Not 100% sure, but 95% sure.
Because typically what you see is the creators of a tool will often be using it in one specific way that they think that they want to use it, that they thought about that way of using it while writing it, and then somebody else comes along and they have an entirely new perspective on things and do some incredible stuff with that same tool that wasn't originally maybe intended in intended use, but still amazing nonetheless. So, yeah, FullControl GCode Designer. Right. What else do we have? We're already 40 minutes in already. We talked about this briefly before we started recording, but maybe let's do these more often and not have this many topics in every one, because it is exhausting.
It's basically what we're saying every time. Yeah. Blame me.
Yeah, totally your fault.
Yeah. Astrolabicon.
Right.
Is that right? Yeah, properly pronounced?
Astrolabicon. It's like a...
Make Anythings Astrolabicons. Controversy. This again goes a bit into the direction of patents and things like that. I
IP,
actually did not want IP, did not want to talk about that at the moment. But I think it's a really interesting topic. There have been some updates, but I think so maybe what basically happened is, if you haven't watched the video, so Make Anything, Devin from Make Anything, he posted a video on a really cool puzzle that he made 2-3 years back. It's, I don't know, a reinvented version of a Rubik's Cube, or
it's a physical puzzle
it's
that
a
he can
physical
print
puzzle.
himself. So it's like it's two halves that he twists to mate up with each other, and there's a channel going through them that has different colored spheres, balls in them, and the goal is to arrange them all in a certain pattern where all the same color balls are right next to each other. So he's designed those. He's selling the files of those on My Mini Factory, $2.99 for one of the puzzles that I just clicked on. So that's one of his one of the bits of his business, basically. Is this one? Oh, there's even a free one. So Classic V2, so you can try that out for yourself, and there are nicer versions that you can buy. So along comes Torsion 3D, and they now have a Kickstarter for basically his puzzle that looks pretty much the same, that works exactly the same, and they claim, oh, it's an all-new, fascinating puzzle design. I think that's the part that's kind of pissing you off. Hey, we made this again. I don't think that's the biggest problem. It's the claiming they've invented it, and it's not inspired by Make Anythings Design at all. That's what they're claiming. Because there is prior art, there is some. I mean, the absolute concept isn't totally. Oops, sorry about that Zoom banner. The exact concept of how those puzzles are built isn't like totally new, but the way that that Make Anything implemented it into his puzzles is pretty characteristic, and Porsche just pretty much ripped it off. So, yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, he's pissed they didn't credit him.
And they approached him like a couple of days before the Kickstarter went live or something, and were like, "Hey, if you want to promote this, basically, then yeah." Well,
I think the big question for him now was, can he really do anything about that? He did not have any design patents, Geschmacksmuster, or however you want to call it, design patents.
Hold on, I was muted. Design patents, yes.
Design patents. For that, so he probably can't do anything about that Kickstarter that's going on, but just the nice way would have been to approach him, to credit him, and maybe to at least share a bit of the profit with him, since he made it popular, and he did not have like the initial design or the initial idea for that. I think there were similar puzzles many years back, but the way just he did it was a bit novel.
The other thing, of course, is also like if you really want to go through the pain of saying, okay, this is my design that is being ripped off, like, do you really want to go through the entire legal process of defending that, of suing a company that has no names attached to it? It's just that the company, Torsion, is basically a company that has no face. Nobody knows where they're from. Nobody knows who's running it. They're just an anonymous blob. Like, do you really want to go through that?
And especially since you haven't filed any design patents for it, it's gonna be hard to defend it. I think it was primarily the way they did it, not crediting him and not approaching him way up front.
Exactly. On the topic, one of the things that I've thought about doing eventually, once everything else is done, it's total sidetrack. So I've got the Voron 2.4 behind me. Actually, I can there's a box. And they have a printed forward project where people who have already built a Voron, basically, I think they send in a part and basically prove that they can print these parts to a high spec. And then you can order parts for the print you want to build, for the 2.4 or the 1 point or 0 point something, through that printed forward team or process, and get like super high quality parts. You pay for those. Those are not free. I think the 2.4 parts are $100 or something, plus shipping, which is a fair price, I think. So what I was thinking is, typically printing parts, like used to be a huge thing for Prusa Mendels. You could buy a set of parts. First they were like $150, now they're $30, if you can even still buy them. Why not do it like this and approach the designers of the printer, say, hey, I want to sell your parts on eBay. What is a fee you would want per kit sold? And just do it like that, where it's like, it's very open. So it's like, okay, I'm charging this much for printing these parts, and out of that, this percentage is for print costs and profit, and this part goes to the designers. Or for printing off designs that are licensed non-commercially. You can just working with the designers and approaching them and going like, hey, would you be okay with me printing these? And what would you want? What would your cut of that would be per part sold?
But speaking of that, I think there are projects who are doing that. I think the MPCNC is something that is non-commercial, but I have seen official resellers. I don't know if the viewers can see it in the background. My FTL Nerf Blaster is something where there are official resellers of kits and parts. And I think in the background, it's managed in a way that they pay a bit of royalty to the creators of the project, to fund them. And it helps them, for example, to distribute parts in countries where they can not directly sell to.
Yeah, or in the case of the Voron, it's like these parts are designed to be fitted together on tight tolerances, and not everyone who has a cheap printer might be able to pull off those same tolerances. And
maybe materials as well. I don't know what material did you use to print yours?
So again, these were printed by a member of the printed forward team, and these are all ABS.
Okay.
So all printed on a. Let me check the sheet. Actually, printed on a Voron 2.051. So that's basically a precursor of the 2.4 that I'm building, but it's encased. It has doors that close off. So that works for ABS pretty well. Yeah, just the general approach. If you want to sell parts or make a profit off of parts, just approach the people who own the rights to that and say, hey, I would like to do this. Would you be okay with that? And what would your royalty be for that? Because that really doesn't hurt anyone, right?
No. And I was wondering if there are any platforms out there that offer that as a service where either they approach creators or designers. Hey, can I put your design on my site and I will print it out and you get a cut from that? I am not sure if I think I have seen that already, but that might be an interesting idea to.
Yeah, there's a business idea for you.
Yeah, maybe it's distribution. Maybe it's, for example, for my FDL Nerf Blaster. Maybe not everyone who wants to get one of those cool Nerf blasters has a 3D printer at home, and maybe you also have a bigger selection of materials, more capable machines for tighter tolerances, for higher grades, more technical materials. Business idea.
Yeah, we talked about a printer mod that I might be doing that would allow that at some point.
Oh yes.
Yeah, but I mean,
Looking forward to that.
that's gonna be fun going on the Voron. So yeah, that's something I'm going to talk more about once the Voron build is done, which is starting today. On the one hand, I'm looking forward to it because it's a proper printer build. On the other hand, it's like, well, this is going to be like a 30-hour marathon. Well, it's not going to be just one stream. But this is going to be a huge effort to live stream everything. We'll see. I think I'm going to cut it down to doing every second day or every other day. Original plan was to do it daily, but
have you checked your bill of materials to be sure that there are no stoppers in between?
So actually, I've been in close contact with Adam and Max from the Voron team. And they've been incredibly helpful. Like I've already got really good vibes about this build, and they called me up and like, hey, there are going to be a lot of eyes on your build. Can we have a look through your parts, maybe? And so yesterday we spent, I think, an hour. They took an hour out of their Sunday, and we just went over the parts and just made sure that everything was there. That they were interested in what the Formbot kit ships with these days. And turns out the parts are all right. Like they're not the super high end-ish. They're not the most super high end parts, but they're gonna work probably. I've already recognized some issues, like the stepper motors. They come with 1 meter long cables with the plugs crimped onto them already, and that's gonna be too short probably. So I'm gonna have to do something about that. Well, yeah, so the parts should all be there, and it's just about building it at this point.
Cool. Yeah, I'm kind of envious because this is one of the machines I would really like to build, but I just don't have at the moment enough space and time for another printer.
I don't have the space for it either, but I'm building it because I want to build it. I literally don't know where it's going to live.
People are really interested in it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going with the 300 by 300, which is the medium size for the Voron 2.4.
Heavy-heartedly, I have also already started to basically disassemble a couple of old printers that I have where I definitely know that I don't need them anymore.
First time, actually. This is one of the big problems that we as influencers and content creators have, that we do get a lot of machines, and after a review, most of them usually just sit somewhere. Yeah. I don't want to sell them. I have been given away a resin printer and a couple of other printers already to friends in the past, but there's still printers around where either they're not properly working or I have already like partly worked on them and it's not something you would give away. But it still feels kind of hard to say, okay, this is a 3D printer and I'm not just taking it apart and maybe throwing parts of the enclosure away because I don't need it anymore. People might think we are crazy, but it's hard. And 3D printers are just so maker spaces. At some point, they don't want more 3D printers. People who are getting into 3D printing, it feels wrong to give them the printers that we reject, basically. So our fallout, our waste, where it's like some other Ender 3 clone that's just not really good. Do you really want to give that to someone who's just starting out? Not sure. Is there any value in someone who already has a good printer in having another one of those? Not really. For me, I was asking, hey, first time, this is a regular thing for me. I've probably taken about parts 10 printers now. I've got 2 boxes worth of, 2 Samla boxes worth of stepper motors. I've got heated beds. I've got basically enough components to build 3 fresh new printers out of those. But it's just 3D printers are not something that the manufacturer wants back, which I would also appreciate for a lot of these machines where the manufacturer just says, hey, we want it back. But they're so hard to ship. when you have an assembled Ender 3, you take it apart, but you would need to repackage it in the original materials, and then the printer's worth what, $150? It costs more to ship that internationally than to throw it out, basically.
Even in Germany, having a fully assembled printer shipped around requires you to have proper packaging and things like that, and it's rarely worth the effort. So I'm usually looking for people that are close to me by location, if they are happy with it, if they can learn something from it, if it's giving them anything in return, that's fine. But yeah, there's still a bunch of machines around. I'm quite sure some tinkerers would be very happy with, but it's unfortunately not really worth shipping it around. And so I'm heavy-heartedly taking those things apart at the moment.
Yeah, maybe
to get more space.
Maybe it's some
Voron to
maybe to build, well, some printers had to go. Maybe once we're back to doing road trips, and once that's okay again, I can just pack a car full of printers and just tour Germany and deliver them.
Yeah. All right. Next topic.
We got sidetracked there just a tiny bit.
Teeny tiny bit.
On the topic of cars and road trips in EVs. So Saku is making solid state batteries with a 3D printer. So they are printing basically the structure of a lithium battery or rechargeable lithium battery from a 3D printer, and with using that 3D printed structure, they're saying they can do 30 to 50% less materials for the same capacity, basically. Which is amazing. I mean, so half the size, a third lighter, and 30 to 50% less materials. That is comparing a solid-state 3D printed battery to a lithium-ion battery, to a traditional lithium-ion jelly roll kind of material, or jelly roll build. Yeah, solid-state battery is still something that's sold or marketed as the holy grail, but
you are way more involved in that. Are there any solid-state batteries, solid-state lithium batteries on the market yet, or is this still like the holy grail everyone is looking for?
So solid-state right now is academia. So late stages of research that companies are working to put into a proper product, but they are not on the market yet. So you cannot go out and buy solid-state batteries at scale yet. Yeah. So, currently it's all pouch cells or cylindrical cells. Yeah. Or prismatic cells, those are both coming in whatever. It's all still traditional lithium-ion batteries.
Mm. And, well, the reason for 3D printing is because they are probably using some intricate, complex structure on the inside that cannot be created in another way. I think they're not really saying that you can now 3D print your battery at home, but they are usually using a kind of a layered approach to add this complexity to the product that would not be possible with a more conventional approach. Yeah.
Well, and to be honest, I'm not exactly sure how exactly 3D printing improves the process, because I mean, if you look at the way that a traditional lithium-ion cell is made, it is literally foils that are stacked on top of each other and then rolled up into your typical 18650 cells, just rolled up, put into a metal casing, and that's it. It is really fine layers that are stacked on top of each other that then make up your electrodes, essentially. So I'm not sure how a 3D printing process would allow that to be more material efficient or give it higher energy density. But I guess it's one of the solutions that is working, and that's doing that for them.
And it's a great buzzword for funding and news articles. Yeah, you always have to say that as well, because, well, if you take a look at batteries and the amount of batteries that are needed, the process of manufacturing need to be really, really optimized in order to compete with other processes. It doesn't really help you if your battery is 50% lighter if it costs 40 times as much.
Yeah. And that's the thing as well. I don't think they said anything about cost. The thing is, lithium-ion batteries right now, their cost is tied to the resources involved by the most part. So lithium is super cheap, but it's the more exotic stuff like nickel, cobalt, those sort of resources. And cobalt, of course, has a bit of a questionable background with the way that it is mined. So you try to use as little of that as possible. And in fact, if you go in a different direction and not say, hey, I want the absolutely highest performing and most energy dense cell possible, which is what the solid state battery would do, and you say, I just want something that is less resource intensive and therefore less expensive, you can do something like LFP batteries. So that is lithium iron phosphate, I think is the chemistry, which Tesla is using for the Model 3 and Model Y that are made in China. So those have less high-end characteristics, but they are a lot cheaper to build. So and less intensive as far as cobalt goes. I don't know if they're even using cobalt for those cells.
Okay.
So that is just a different approach to making something that is in the end cheaper.
Yeah. Okay. But in the end, if you take a look what batteries cost, or lithium batteries cost 20, 30 years ago, of course, new processes will always be way more expensive in the beginning, but as soon as they get more and more industrialized, even something like a complex 3D printing approach might lead to a product that it's cheap if you do it at a large scale.
Yeah, and maybe in the end, if you learn what was so special about the 3D printing process that made it better, and you can replicate that in a way that is maybe not as time-consuming as 3D printing, that's the best of both worlds. Let's jump into questions. So we have 3 today. First one is from Sven. Question for you guys: isn't it time that 3D printer tests also start testing the speed of a 3D printer? Do speedboat race bench with default profiles and with some custom settings? So are we testing speed? I guess more or less we are already. But the thing is, the printers are all just pretty slow these days. They are all printing at roughly the same speeds. Most of them use pretty much a default Cura profile. I think back in the day, there was still a much bigger difference in how fast a printer was doing its thing. I think for some reason the load spot comes up as being a printer that was particularly slow, but I'm not sure about that. But they're all like, these days if you throw a benchiator printer, it's always like, well, this takes 2 hours, basically. Yeah. Then none that are really that much faster or that much slower.
I think the big question here is, how would you judge the speed? Of course, you could say, okay, at that speed, the printer started skipping, but that doesn't include the extrusion systems and things like that. This was already, I think, a challenge when you were at the East Coast Rep Festival and you did you were a judge at the 1 hour and half an hour Benchy challenge.
Which sounds so trivial now that people are doing benches in like 2 minutes. I think it's hard to rate the speed in the end. Well, I think we need to separate two things here. So it is super easy to rate the speed. You look at a Benchy and say, okay, this took 20 minutes and that took 2 hours and 30 minutes. But the thing that Sven also brings up is you always have that balance. You go faster and your print's going to look worse. You go slower and typically your print's going to look better. So that's a balance that you're going to have to make when you say, okay, I'm saying this is better than that. The way I do it is I always look at what the manufacturer recommends speed-wise. If they have a profile, I use that. Because that is the way that the manufacturer intends for their machine to perform. And that's, if I'm my naive saying and my easy way out is it's like, well, if anyone knows how to tune this printer, it's the manufacturer themselves. With the manufacturer themselves, there's whatever. The manufacturer knows best how to use their printer. Of course, that relieves me of all responsibility for, your profile that you've tuned in sucks. But again, that's what the manufacturer thought their printer was capable of and was able to do.
Yeah. I could imagine a test where you would just print like benchy after benchy and, well, 5 minutes less, 5 minutes less, 5 minutes less. And then you try to judge the point where you have a big degeneration of quality. But what does that mean? Even at the speedboat race challenge, it's primarily about speed and having a part in the end that at least a bit resembles a 3D benchy. Is a 2-minute horrible looking benchy better than a really, really good looking 10-minute one? That always depends on what you're looking for. And it's hard to judge that. If you can't optimize for speed and quality, it's hard because those are two optima and they're usually going vice versa.
And it's also both speed and quality have so many dimensions to them. The quality has, okay, what are your overhangs like? Are your surfaces solid? Do you have melty artifacts like on the chimney? Etc., etc. And then speed, if you say, okay, I'm just printing faster, like what does that mean? Does it mean I'm using less infill? Does that mean I'm increasing accelerations? Does it mean I'm increasing top speeds? Do I increase jerk? Do I just increase travel speed? Do I reduce my retracts? Like all those things make your print faster, but there are all different ways to achieve the same outcome. So that's something where Sven Michele says, hey, maybe try tuning in a as fast as possible speed on a printer you test. It's like that is a very hard thing to do properly, because in the end you're always going to disappoint someone that says, hey, but I've got the same printer and I'm printing with Johnny's magic profile that they're sharing, and it's so much better than what you did and you're not doing this printer justice. That's the thing that a reviewer will have to put up with then. So yeah, I tend to stick with default profiles as much as possible, because that's, at least for what a review is to me, that is something that I can review. That is a direct result of what the manufacturer provides and not a result of what I'm doing to the printer, which is my general mantra for doing not doing mods on printers before I test them. Yeah.
An interesting question. I think you said it pretty well. And in the end, it's also, I think, the question what the people are expecting from you. You do your reviews in a way, I do mine in a way. If I would be like the king of 3D benchy speed printing, of course I would include that, but it's something that is really, really hard to judge because it has so many layers to it. If somebody has an idea how one could do that, or if maybe could print a reference on the best, fastest 3D printer, and you can say, okay, by tuning the profiles, you can get to the same quality as something, but it's hard. It's really hard. It would be hard for me to give a proper result. And maybe comparing two printers, that would be working, but just giving an objective review for one machine is hard.
Yeah, I guess what would work is, if you want to see how well is this printer suited to printing fast, is by having actually a standardized G code. maybe has you start in NG code, but you have acceleration, stroke, speeds, fan settings, temperatures is already one that's hard because there's a variation of like 15 degrees between printers. That just having a standardized print file that you let every printer do, and in the end, hopefully they print all at the same speed. But then you can go in and judge, okay, this printer is showing more ringing, or this is showing more artifacts with cooling. So you can at least judge the individual bits of a printer, how well they would be suited to printing fast.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's going to be really interesting because I, for example, do have a big box of the new FL Sun Speed Racer printer downstairs who claims, we're a super fast printer. For such a machine, it will be interesting to really judge if this is a machine suitable for that. So I think that discussion right now was a really good preparation for at least judging what that machine is capable of.
Yeah, speed claims are always tough. And I mean, we've had this discussion on the podcast before. Like, would you rather print fast or would you rather print prettier? And I'm on the side of like, hey, bigger? Okay.
Bigger. The question was, would you prefer a bigger or a faster printer? And you were always on the bigger side, and I was always on the faster side. That
is true. Okay, so I misremembered that, but yeah, speed is something that's not like taking away from what you can do with the machine. Like a slower printer is still going to be able to print all the same things that a faster printer can. So it's not like a slower printer is not really limiting you in the things you can do with it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So that question answered. I just saw one of our 3 questions disappeared. So I guess we're just doing 2 today.
We're just doing 2 today.
Okay. So Yannick is.
I think they. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's try and record more of these and Yannick is asking, question for the next episode: what do you do with your filament rest? So your leftovers on your spools. Do you join them together or throw them away? Or he didn't find a reliable method to join them together, but it would seem very useful to me. So you have a solution to that, an end-all solution to that, actually.
Yeah, I have a new toy in the basement. A professional desktop filament extruder, which could be used for that. So you just take all of the residues that are still, or the leftovers that are still on the spool, shred them and make new filament out of it.
Easy.
Bit expensive. What I also have, and what I actually wanted to make a video about, but it did not work out for me, was a filament joiner, which is basically, it looks like a clamp where you have, I think it's a PTFE part in the middle that is also split, but has let me start from the beginning.
Okay.
It is basically a device that has a bit of PTFE tube that is split in the middle in it. So you heat up your filament ends, you join them together, and then you drag them through this piece of PTFE, which should get the filament to more or less a diameter where it is workable on your 3D printer, so something like 1.92 millimeters. But that thing just did not properly work. I've seen others just use really a piece of PTFE tube. They slide it on their filament. They exactly do that. They heat up the ends of the filament, put them together, slide that piece of PTFE through. The problem is, if you have long leftovers, you have to drag that remaining piece of PTFE tube all the way down. That device I had was helping with that, but the device was just horrible. So don't buy that. I
mean, I remember seeing just joiners like that, where it's a piece of PTFE that is just I think it was in an aluminum block and gets heated, and you basically just, it heats the inside of that tube, and you just join your filament inside that PTFE tube. No. Though I'm not sure how well that would actually join and stick together, because a join like that is always something that could potentially fail. That is a a point where your filament could crack, and the last thing you want is, feeding in filament and all of a sudden, well, there goes that other spool that you joined onto.
One, in my opinion, really neat solution is the palette from Mosaic 3D. The multi. Of course, you have seen it.
Have you seen that?
The pellet extruder, not the pellet extruder.
What do you mean?
The pellet, the box where you can now feed 8 different filaments, and it joins them for multicolor 3D printing or for. Did I pronounce that now wrong? No, Mosaic palette.
Mosaic manufacturing, 3D printing evolved. Okay, what's their? Oh, I heard pellet, like the raw palette.
No, with
okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 Germans talking in English about 3D printing. Fantastic idea for a podcast. Wow.
So what's the name for the palette? It's I think primarily a multicolor printing assistant. It's a box which has a professional filament welder on the inside, and it can weld different color materials to each other that are then fed into your 3D printer, or you can even use it for rest 3D printing. So I think there is a mode. I don't have one, unfortunately, but you just plug in your leftovers of filament in there, and it has a runout detection included. And when the first one is empty, it will change to like the next input.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously the palette, a automated filament joiner, I guess, is the most trivial way you could describe it.
Yeah.
So that could definitely work, but buying a full palette for just using up those 2 meters of filament you have on a spool might be a bit of a waste.
Yeah. Perhaps.
Maybe if you have one in a makerspace, and you could. So with the palette, you can also make like custom spools of filament. So it can like pre-produce, for example, rainbow filament or a random color filament, and you just wind that up on a spool, and you use that on any printer. Of course, the way that it is mostly intended to be used is directly in line with the feed-in of a printer when you have up to 8 different colors. And then you slice it in a specific way, and then the palette prepares the filament going into the printer to have the right color at the right time. Yeah. But hey, you could use that outside of a printer as well, and just splice together your little remaining bits of filament.
Yeah. If you're just having a 3D printer with a filament runout detection, and you are, well, don't do really long prints, overnight prints, you can just leave the filament in the machine until it runs out and wait for the beep and feed in something new. It's not really efficient, but that would also be working.
Absolutely, yeah. And then basically it's just
resuming the prints.
Yeah, I guess technically it is still joined in the hot end then. The hot end becomes your filament joiner, because you have the old filament in the nozzle, and you put the new one on top. So technically you are still joining them. Technically. But yeah.
Well, if you're not purging. Yeah.
Well, even then, it's still. Oh well, yeah, but that's a great solution. And those filament sensors, they're like $3 if you get the ready-made one. And they're pretty easy to add to a printer. That is a great suggestion.
They are. Yeah. I don't know if there are some people that had good success with joining filaments together by hand, but I don't know. Maybe my hands are not made for that. But
yeah, I've never tried it.
It didn't work nicely out for me so far. There is, how is she called? Heliox, the French 3D printing YouTuber.
Not
I think she's
sure.
called. Give me 1 second. Heliox.
Okay.
I think she did a video on exactly that filament joiner a while ago. I will link that in the description. So she at least got it working to some extent.
Yeah, but for me, never needed to do it. But then again, I'm probably in a bit of a special situation. I'm looking like right behind the screen. There is a steel shelf that is filled to the brim with filaments. So I really can't get into the situation of actually using up a spool. But yeah, I guess normal people have to like swap filaments and replace empty spools. Wow, normies.
I have to be totally honest. I bought quite a bit of filament this year and also last year. I don't know. I don't get that flooded anymore with filaments like in the past.
Yeah,
I don't know. Just standard PLA.
Yeah, at some point I need to restart Filament. So many things to do. It's like you have a to-do list that of things that you want to do, but the list keeps getting longer.
Yeah. Maybe one last note. So the video I released on Saturday on the PCTG filament, I wasn't expecting much from that video. In the end, it was, again, way more work than I expected in the first place. But I thought, okay, this is going to be one of these underperforming videos again. But it was actually for quite a while one of my best videos I did in a while, and does have now almost 100,000 views.
I looked at it yesterday and it was like at 45k, and I was like, okay, well, like I said, Stefan's making the better videos. Mine was at 10k.
So. I wouldn't say that. Maybe I just have more luck with the algorithm.
The thing is also, making videos that cater to the algorithm, that is also a YouTuber skill. That's something that apparently you are better at than I am.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I still also envy like the video quality and also the ideas that you have, and could never come up with.
If it doesn't get people to watch them, like, what's the point of having 4K 60 well-lit studio equipment stuff when people don't care about it? Whatever. Yeah. That's an entirely different topic, and I think we are well past our planned time for this episode. Again, let's try and do the next one a bit earlier than another 4 weeks, because I know you guys also want to see us ramble about stuff or listen to us in a hopefully pleasing voice that we're doing our best to maintain. But yeah, Stefan, thank you for taking the time again for this long-ish Meltzone episode.
Thank you for your time. Sorry for always delaying the recording, but
you've got
it was a pleasure.
Responsibilities outside of producing this stuff, so understandable. Thank you all for listening, for watching. You can support Stefan or me through Patreon or YouTube memberships in the links in the video description. And we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Yes. Goodbye.